أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم
Why did he marry Aisha at such a young age? And can we use that as an example for us to marry young girls the same age today? Is that right? So let's answer this question. It's a good question, and it's an easy question. Who was Aisha radiallahu anha? She was the daughter of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu. And who was Abu Bakr as-Siddiq? Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, he was a well-known man in Mecca, right? Well-known, honest. He was an aristocrat, a very influential man. He was the supporter of the Prophet ﷺ. He was a companion of the Prophet ﷺ. And Aisha was his daughter. So one day the Prophet ﷺ said to him, from the inclination he got from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says, Abu Bakr, he says, do you love me? Abu Bakr said, Ya Rasulullah, I sacrificed my mother and my family for you. He said, then I would like to ask you for your daughter in marriage. This is very common among the Arabs. Don't think about Norway, don't think about Europe, don't think about China, don't think about America, you think about the Arabs. The Arabs at that time, it was urf, it was part of their urf. It was very normal for them to ask for the daughter of a man when she was 9 or 10 so that that daughter could come and move with the family. Not sleep with him, but come and move with that family so he could observe her, she could observe him. So by the time she got to the age where she could have sexual relationships and have children and intimacy, they would have already built a bond. Do you understand that? Do you understand that? So the Prophet ﷺ, he didn't sneak around someplace and get her phone number. He didn't try to meet with her somewhere. He wasn't eyeballing her. He was not desiring her. This was his best friend. And who was Abu Bakr? Abu Bakr was one of the most respectful people of Mecca, of the Quraysh. So if some crazy, foolish, ignorant, corrupt, hating people wants to call the Prophet ﷺ a pedophile, na'udhu billah, then this means that the mother of Aisha, the father of Aisha, Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, and Hani, I forget his wife's name. That means they would have had to facilitate the Prophet ﷺ in having a pedophile relationship. Would that be correct? Could two respectful parents, could they have been guilty of something like that? Could Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have inspired the Prophet ﷺ, but somehow or another he fell out of inspiration and he did something like that? No, that could not be the answer. The answer had to be something different. So the Prophet ﷺ said to Abu Bakr, "Oh Abu Bakr, why don't you give me your daughter in marriage?" And Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu replied, he said, "Oh Messenger of Allah, but we're brothers." And the Prophet ﷺ said, "Yes, but we're not those kind of brothers." See, they're not brothers of the blood. They're not brothers of the same family. This means that your daughter is lawful to me. And it is within the context of what the Arab urf, that means the Arab society. What is well known to them, what is legal, what is decent, what is dignified, what is halal, what is clean. So the Prophet ﷺ could not have been asking to do something that was abnormal. It had to be something that was normal. Now let us look at the fruit that came from the tree so we can understand it. Who was Aisha radiallahu anha? She's the woman that memorized the Qur'an. When the Qur'an was revealed, when the last ayats of the Qur'an, the last 6,636 ayats were revealed, 3 months later, Aisha had memorized the whole Qur'an. Think about that. Secondly, let's look at Aisha radiallahu anha. Aisha radiallahu anha, because she lived with the Prophet ﷺ. She saw him, she understood him intimately, clearly. Her mind was bright, and she was a powerful young girl, a very aggressive young girl. Powerful, aggressive, and deep and intelligent. memorized the whole Qur'an, and guess what? She was holding with her when the Prophet ﷺ passed away at least 2,600 ahadiths that nobody else knew. And that's why after Abu Huraira radiallahu anha, nobody related to us more hadiths than Aisha radiallahu anha. So when you look at the product, when a girl is raped, when a girl is molested, when a girl has been involved in some pedophile type relationship, she becomes dysfunctional. She becomes, something different. She doesn't know herself. She becomes guilty. She becomes dirty. She becomes dysfunctional. And you see the result of it throughout her life. Is that correct or not? No, not our mother Aisha radiallahu anha. She was the teacher of 72 of the companions of the Prophet ﷺ and the tabi'een and the atba' tabi'een. She was their teacher, our mother. And when the Prophet ﷺ passed away, she was only 18 years old, which means she only was married to the Prophet ﷺ and lived with him 9 years. And when she died, she was a mother of the believers. Is that correct or not? Is that right or not? So that means nobody could marry their mother. So from 18 years old until she was 73 years old, she lived by herself teaching. Which one of the women could do that? So when the people talk stupid, give them some of that history so they can understand who she is. And when you understand who she is, you can understand the context of things. And so, sister, may Allah reward you for that question. It comes in a lot of places, but that's the answer. And we say at the end, Allahu A'lam. Say that. And that's for what we don't know.
So the question is a very common one, and that is that many people, non-Muslims and sometimes even Muslims, are perturbed that how come Aisha, our mother, was married at a very young age. And frankly, this is a question that people who study anthropology and intelligent researchers that are non-Muslim never bring up. Because what is happening here is that we are taking our cultural mores, our cultural norms, and then back projecting them onto the Arabian society. You see, the age of marriage is something that has no normative, no standard age. And cultures and ethnicities throughout the centuries had different ages of marriage. Shakespeare wrote his famous Romeo and Juliet. Do you know that the first actors that played Romeo and Juliet were how old? 15 and 14 years old. The boy was 15, the girl was 14. For Shakespeare's time, now if we had a Romeo and Juliet play, the content and the love scenes and the romance, we would project it onto an 18 or 19 and a 19 or 17-year-old, We would say, oh, this is a young man and a young woman. In our age, in 2014, Romeo and Juliet, we think of like a 19-year-old with his 17-year-old sweetheart or 18-year-old sweetheart. That's our version. Well, when Shakespeare wrote the play, it was for a 14-year-old and a 15-year-old. Right? Only 500 years ago. In that age and time, people matured faster. They were not treated like little kids in the bodies of adults. Adolescence didn't exist in that regard. When you became a young man or woman, biologically mature, you were treated like a young man and a woman. And therefore, culture changes. In America, 100 years ago, young ladies, 100 years ago, young ladies would get married regularly at the age of 13 and 14. That is why until very recently, literally like a few decades ago, in some states, including my own state of Tennessee where I currently live, the law said that you have to be 14 years old to get married. Recently they changed that, updated that. But when the laws were written 100 years ago, what was the age they put for marriage? 14. Now you tell me, today, if somebody marries a 14-year-old, he's going to go to jail. But their own grandmothers and grandfathers, forget their own. Let me be totally blunt here. My grandmother, may Allah Azza wa Jal bless her with Jannah, she's passed away. She's the only grandparent I ever met of mine. My grandmother in rural India, back in the 1920s, she got married at the age of 13. My grandmother. And I knew her as a very righteous, as a very good, Muslim lady. She never complained or she was irritated her whole life. My father married me when I was 13. She had a great grandfather, that's my grandfather, she's a great husband. She had lots of children. That was the cultural norms. Why are you defending Aisha when Aisha was the happiest wife in the whole world? Who are you to get irritated when Aisha herself was the luckiest, most fortunate woman in the whole world? She wasn't complaining. She wasn't feeling anything bad. So in that day and age, puberty, intellectual maturity, in the hot Arabian climate, in the desert life, young children age faster because you have to take on responsibilities. So Aisha's age in her time would be our equivalent of whatever, 16, 17. And I have no doubt that if things proceed in another 100 years, it will be illegal to marry an 18 or 17-year-old. And I have no doubt, because we're progressing or whatever, regressing in that regard, the minimum marriage age will be rising as it has risen in the last 600 years. This is a human fact. This is an undeniable fact. Western culture itself has continued to raise the age of marriage. So for us to now criticize Arabian culture 14 centuries ago, you begin with criticizing your own grandmother and grandfather and your own ancestors of the Middle Ages. That is really not a very rational thing to do. Different time, different culture, different place. Bottom line, the worst enemies of the Prophet ﷺ in his lifetime, they tried everything to smear him. They did not find it problematic that he married Aisha. It was a norm of the culture, and it wasn't a problem at all in their society and culture. Even his worst enemies, not a single comment, because this is the norm. Aisha herself is a happy wife. She is a loving wife. She has so many ahadith of the Prophet ﷺ. She clearly has not been traumatized. Why are you guys 14 centuries later so traumatized? So think about it and be a little bit more mature, a little bit more anthropological, a little bit more historical. There's absolutely nothing wrong. And Muslims, don't apologize for the truth and don't distort the truth. There are Muslims that try to deny this. Oh, he didn't marry Aisha as a young girl. Ya akhi, look, that's not the way forward. We don't lie for the sake of our religion. Astaghfirullah. We have the truth. We're not going to cover up the truth if people find it embarrassing. This is the reality. Deal with it. Our Prophet ﷺ married a young girl and it was fine for the time. I am not saying we need to resurrect this age in our time because times have changed. And Allah Azza wa Jalla knows better.
الله أكبر الله